Okay, everyone, we are going to call this meeting to order. This is the Local Comprehensive Planning Committee, and the meeting is for September 26th, 5:30, right on the nose. And I would like to call the meeting to order. So I do have to warn people that the meeting is being, to inform people, the meeting is being televised via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the Town of Barnstable website. And I must ask whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. No, thank you. So I would like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting, which was September 12th, with one correction, that Jennifer was in fact at the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Cheryl?
Second.
Fran? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
May we do a roll call vote?
Okay, so let's do the roll call vote on the minutes, and then we'll have it for the attendance for the minutes for next time. Okay, so
Fran Parks, aye. Cheryl Powell, here.
Lindsay Council here.
Wendy Northcross here.
Avery Revere, here.
Bob Twist here.
Thank you. Okay, and is there any public comment? Was there any received correspondence? No received correspondence, thank you. And tonight, our topic of discussion is to review the draft facilities chapter, including issues, opportunities, policies, and strategies. And for that, I'd have to Mr. K come to the lectern and turn the meeting over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning. Tonight, yes, as the chair mentioned, we will be talking about our facilities chapter, goals and strategies, with the next steps obviously being to develop out actions for each of the chapters. I'll do a quick overview of, again, as we like to do in the beginning of each meeting, kind of start to where we've been to where we are today. So the overall process, and I'll do it quickly because I know you guys have seen this a number of times. But, this has been about a 2-year process. We've started with our existing conditions report. It's a weighty document that dove into all the existing conditions of all the subject matters that we are diving into this past year. Phase 1 incorporates our existing conditions, but also incorporates all the engagement that was conducted for over 18 months, crisscrossing the town, trying to understand what the strengths, opportunities, and weaknesses of our community are. All of that, the existing conditions and the community engagement, developed out a vision statement. That vision statement is what you see there and what we have typically in the back of the room, and I'll post it on barnstablelcp.com. Vision statement kind of highlighting all the major overarching issues and what we strive for in our next 10 years here in the town of Barnstable. So phase 2, we start diving into chapters. That's what we've been doing for the past year, diving into the chapters, the strategies that go along with each of these chapters. So land use, housing, natural resources, infrastructure and facilities, economic development, and cultural heritage and design. Today is kind of a cleanup, as we have done a facilities discussion, but that was more of the horizontal facilities and infrastructure. So talking about our sewers, talking about our roadways, talking about our sidewalks. And we didn't really, or we barely touched on really our vertical facilities. So really our town offices, our police station, our schools. And so tonight, we needed to get back to that section of the chapter and just touch on those issues before we continue on with our phase 2, which is the action plan. So to develop out the chapters, we worked with our expert presentations, we did interviews, we again looked back towards our vision statement, looked back towards our existing conditions, and looked back towards all the public input that was provided. Once we have developed out these chapters, we began the discussion of the future land use map and what that would look like. We've had 2 really good sessions. I thought last session was a great conversation. And we will be putting that land use map, that future land use map in draft form online for public participation this October. Kay Maldonado is working with the commission to finalize that interactive map so that we can get it out there, and we'll do the press release and all that as soon as it's live and ready to go. But it will be for all of October to really think about that future land use map and build off of our conversation at our last meeting. So tonight we're going to be talking about facilities, not the sexiest of topics for our land use strategies, but it's something that I think we need to nail down. Our town facilities map, is in many of our plans actually, identifying all of our facilities, and you have in your packet the map itself. We have it online as well. Really what it touches on kind of high level, all of our facilities, our public schools, our wastewater infrastructure, our water facilities, our airport. And that's what we're talking about this evening. There's a lot of different aspects of land use, one of which, is our own facilities and what that looks like in the next 10 years, and does that look dramatically different than it does today. So there's the map for you. We're kind of scattered all throughout our community, depending on what type of facility it is. And real quick, that's right, just wanted to get back to just to touch on the future land use map, and this is what it will look like moving forward in October. Sorry, I just wanted to highlight this for you. And we've added the sections that we talked about at the last meeting, including, better identifying the industrial park area, identifying 132, identifying the community college, identifying that West End neighborhood. Obviously, this is in draft form. And not only the public, but you as the committee are able to comment on that as we move forward. So, 1 second. Before we get to this, I want to switch over to our Word doc, if you don't mind, Kate. So before we get to next steps and everything, I think it would be better to get into our facilities chapter. So what you have before you this evening, so to step back here, we're diving into our goals and strategies. Typically, we go to the back of the room, we divide into different sections, and we start having a discussion about each of the strategies. And speaking with the chair and vice chair, I think we had a really good discussion at our last meeting, and keeping everyone together seemed to be the way to go moving forward. So hopefully everyone's okay with that. So this evening, we'll dive into these goals and strategies together as a team, and that way, hey, we maybe save a few minutes in reporting out as well. So what you see before you might look a little bit different than what was printed and what was sent in your email, but that's simply because what's printed and what's in your email was done in InDesign, a program that we use. This is a Word document, so Kate can update that Word doc as we're talking. So that's really, it's just a stylistic approach and a different program for all the same words that we're looking at this evening. So with that, our discussion here tonight is, again, facilities, and we're talking about vertical facilities for the town-owned facilities. There's not a lot of strategies and goals to work through, so we certainly could take our time working through each of them. So I'll just go ahead and start, and please, as we typically do, as I'm reading through these, please weigh in with any comments or edits or suggestions that you may have. So the first one before you here is for public facilities, and it states, provide well-maintained public facilities and services that serve the current and future social, economic, cultural, safety, traffic, and communications needs of the community, that are equitably distributed and are provided with minimal environmental impact. So that's the big overarching goal. It really says a lot. I mean, it captures a lot. I do want to note communications is included in there. I know we are talking land use strategies, but you'll see, and we've had this conversation before, when talking about our goals, And with talking with the public, communication amongst ourselves was a common theme. So incorporating that into our goals we thought was important. So I'll turn it back to the committee if there's any comments or suggested changes there before we move on to strategies.
Lindsay?
Jim, I had a question back on the maps.
Oh, yep.
It lists the schools as public recreation facilities by coloring them in green, and actually that's not accurate. Public schools aren't available for public recreation, so perhaps that could get another, maybe a shade of blue to go along with its blue dot.
I see what you're
Or
saying.
red
So-
dot, I mean,
Yep.
the red.
So the schools themselves, yeah, are identified, but you mean the recreational fields that go along with them?
Yeah, you
Absolutely,
can't-
understood.
So I wouldn't want people to think, oh, that's open. No, not really.
Yep.
Not till 5:30. So,
Good point.
Good catch.
Good to know.
So could I,
another thing, I think, looking at this map, and it does say equitably distributed, we're a little shy in the western part of town. So anyway, I guess it's something for my group to think about, but
Maybe that's a strategy
that's
we
a
want to
strategy.
think about.
To
Yeah,
more accessibility.
accessibility toward geographically.
I think Fran was next after you. Sorry.
Remember,
You're right.
they didn't put Mosswood on this map. The cemetery,
Oh,
that takes up a considerable amount of room in Katuitt.
The cemeteries aren't on the map, and that's
Town facilities?
a town facility.
Facility.
yeah. All
So
the cemeteries.
the
And we
other
get a
th-
lot of them.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, when I read the chapter, they said, discussed parking problems at town waste to water. They left out ropes.
Okay.
And we have a town dock in Katuitt. And lastly, discuss joint planning and siting. If you drive down Osterville, West Barnstable Road on a nice sunny day, or not a nice sunny day, there are four tennis courts, which are 4 pickleball courts. The noise that the neighbors are subjected to is intolerable. I would be screaming at everybody I could think about if I lived there. And so I think that, if you're going to do that and put it in the middle of a group of houses, you need to figure out some way to provide sound tampering, because it's all those courts, when all those courts are busy, it's
So to that reference, I believe that is in the third strategy, you're talking about joint planning and siting.
yeah.
Maybe something to the effect of with maybe further community input or something like that, because I would imagine when citing something like that, the community themselves might have some concerns about noise and stuff like that, perhaps.
Well, maybe not so much before, but after they will.
Yeah, true.
I think Cheryl?
Yes, just to add on to what Lindsay was saying about being kind of sparse on the western side of town, I also note that the western and part of the northern part of the town actually has a lot of what would appear to be open areas, but not necessarily. And that may come in later on development. I think it does. But, with regard to looking where more facilities are needed.
Lindsay?
I had another one for you, too, that might be beneficial to have, and this would be waste to water.
A lot of them.
There's a lot of them, and they take a lot of maintenance to keep them open and in good shape. So,
Signage.
town marinas, those types of things.
Yep, great point.
How about this side of the room? Avery, Bob, Katya? We're talking about ideas for the town facilities chapters.
So if nothing further, I can read in all the strategies, perhaps? Oh, yep, sorry.
Sue?
But a couple things. Well, first of all, I don't think we should put pickleball courts next to houses because
Understood.
just from what you hear and read, it's really, really annoying and you're going to have problems no matter what. So then as I look at this map, I'm thinking to myself, and, you know, the western part is kind of, doesn't have a lot of on here, which I am thinking of as more sort of active recreation. But we have all of our public lands and our conservation lands are passive recreation. So I don't know if there's a way to integrate that at all. And because if you look at that, it makes it a little bit better, you know, it's more the active
Like
recreation to the
protected
east
bike
and the
paths?
passive to the left.
So that, I think
Protected
that might
bike
go back
paths.
to the conversation we've had about putting open space back on all these maps. Maybe we need to do that, even though it gets a little cluttered, but,
Yeah.
I mean, hey, that tells us a story that,
Important,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, then two things. This is on the strategies, and I'm not sure exactly where these ideas would go. But the first one is that in terms of siting and planning for public facilities, I think we need to take into account whatever the, what do I want to say? The best research at the time is telling us about planning for climate change.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my
Really
comment.
needs to go in
Or the
here.
electrification, the modification of the heating plant systems from natural gas to electricity, or
Yeah.
whatever the,
Yeah, and, you know, if you're talking
Best
about
thing for the
doing
climate's gonna
anything
be.
that's near the water, you know, you really have to be
Resiliency.
Yeah,
thinking
climate
about that.
adaptation.
That stuff is important. And then my other one is, and I'm going back, it does say in here, public facilities that serve and the current, future, social, economic, and on and on. And I'm remembering when Carlos Barbosa was on the committee, and he was very strong on having something in here about social services, and we all agreed. So I think that, and I can't figure out a way to say this at all, so, but I think that we ought to add in something that would say the town will work to, the town, not the town, the town will work with local organizations or nonprofit organizations or just organizations to ensure that appropriate social services for the needs of the community
Yep.
are available within the area, which doesn't mean that it has to be available within the town, but it has to be, and
so Susan, you want the town to build that?
no,
Okay,
I just
'cause
want us
isn't this section for facilities that the town owns and operates? Okay.
Yeah, it's meant to be for public facilities, but, I mean, we could certainly,
yeah.
I mean, and services, so, I mean, the town could maybe assist in some manners. For instance, we have community development block grant funds that go towards human services,
Okay.
stuff like that. So there could be some connection
I-
there.
I think that this is
second.
important, and I couldn't think of anywhere else to put it. But, you know, there are a lot of different groups and communities within our community that that need some specialized social services, as well as just the whole general thing that everybody needs. And I just think that we need to have something in there that we want to accommodate that and encourage it for our citizens, but not necessarily it doesn't have to be in our community.
Katya?
Yeah, thank you for bringing, Susan, this important topic. It is like organization as Latinx in Action and others that are serving the communities and that the services are it's served in a different way, like a different glance. And it is what we I think we want is that those organizations that are really small, doesn't have this big volume, there be carry from the town. Like the town can collaborate because, you know, you have a special, someone who can serve with the language capability, with, you know, cultural backgrounds and all that, but we don't have like, you know, other things that need. So the town being a support of that, it is, I like that, the idea, and it's needed.
Okay, Fran?
Jim, I think I think it would be appropriate for the town on the website to list all of the social services that are available. But, you know, so there's a list available for people so they know.
So better communication again.
Yeah.
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 Can I just note that the
Sure.
Human Services Committee is working on precisely that?
Great.
Get to-
And
we'll
don't
get to-
forget, we have the hospital in our community, right? So it could be things like helping with parking. Maybe there would be structured parking with EV plugins or something that in the future that we would want at our hospital. But we have the community centers, we have the senior centers, so those would fall into that social category too. Okay,
Yeah,
Katya?
with the communities, today is the problem that we are facing is that like our elders from the immigrant community, they are not taking any advantage of the services. So we have to have a space that serve the community. So it kind of, when you said like even like a physical space, offering like you know, playground or things all of that, you know, for elders and all that.
Great. Okay. Cheryl?
Adding on to what you were saying, Wendy, with the parking, I agree, and I hadn't thought of that. But amending parking as needed for our growing community or something like that, because it's going to be ever-changing, that as more and more people come into the town, there's going to be more and more, I mean, right now, parking is one of our huge issues, right up there almost with housing. So to something along addressing it as needed as it changes.
Structured parking. I see structured parking in our future, which also provides shade, which is going to be important. Okay, any other?
So I'll read in
You're getting what you
the
need?
strategies there. We touched on the goals there and added a few strategies. Just scrolling down to the 3 strategies there, and we've already begun to touch on them, but the first one, I'll just read these 3 in, and then maybe we could dive a little deeper into each of them. When allocating resources to meet capital needs, the town will consider major maintenance issues of existing facilities and the needs of new or expanded facilities. So really, what that means to say is, you know, evaluating the cost-benefit analysis of our facilities and fixing those major maintenance issues versus maybe considering, you know, different facilities or different methods to provide those services in the future. The next one, the town will ensure that those facilities and services necessary to support development and redevelopment will be adequate without decreasing the current levels of service. And actually, sorry, I added the word current levels of service and struck adopted by this plan, but certainly willing to hear your guys' comments. And then the next one, the town will support and encourage the joint planning, siting, development and use of public facilities and services with other governmental or community organizations in areas of mutual concern and benefit in order to maximize efficiency, reduce costs, and minimize impacts on the environment. So those are the 3 strategies, talking kind of holistically about facilities. One thing I did want to just kind of volley out to the committee that we don't really touch on here is the future of facilities. And when we had our early public engagement, some great comments came back about never even stepping foot in town hall, never even stepping foot at DPW, never ever stepping foot in recreation, because we provide a lot of those services now online. So maybe a strategy of some kind, thinking about facilities' future needs and, you know, creating more efficient ways to provide those services. So maybe our footprint of our building footprint might shrink a little bit.
Or be repurposed?
Or be repurposed.
Just
Yep.
something else?
So just something to put out there as a potential strategy as well.
So Jim, I would like to, I think you were trying to make the point earlier about communication, and interestingly, our meeting gets squeezed into this particular day of the month and time because it doesn't compete with all the other boards and committees, that have to be in this room to be televised, right? So it seems to me that it would be great that future buildings could be provided with whatever telecommunication systems. It's going to make it easier for people to zoom in or zoom out or just, broadcast out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Great idea.
And I have one more thing I would like to, I don't know what bullet it goes under, but I think that when new projects are being considered, that the art and architecture be part of that consideration. Maybe there's a panel of artists, or the Arts Foundation is brought in, and that's a piece of the aesthetic, so that people want to be here and appreciate it.
Showing the diversity.
Yes.
Excellent.
I have
Oh, I'm sorry. Wendy, they call me Tuesday too. Susan.
Yeah, I would like to see the, whatever the social services thing is, as a bullet,
Yep.
and also the climate change as, I think,
Yeah,
that.
climate adaptation.
As a bullet, yeah,
Climate adaptation.
yeah.
Adaptation. Yep.
That's a
Yeah.
good word. And then the other thing, and I never know where to bring this up, but if you all remember at the beginning when we did all the surveys, one of the really big things that people talked about was community and creating
Yeah.
community. And so public facility, we need to think about that.
Places to
when
gather.
in our public, well, not just public facilities, but,
But places to gather. They wanted to come
Gathering
together as
places.
people
Yeah.
to people,
Yeah.
not just zoom in.
yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have to be public.
No.
That would be, I was just reading something the other day about, in suburbia, there aren't gathering places that people can get to really easily, and we certainly have that here.
Pocket parks.
Yeah.
Pop-up parks. Fran.
Yeah,
So this isn't going to be a popular statement, but the fact is that Barnstable is getting close to build out, and we aren't going to be able to support very many more people in this town, because when you build more apartments or housing, or that means that you need more schools. That means that it's a pressure on the police department, fire department, roads, and so I think a strategy looking at build out is gonna, you can't constantly add new businesses or new housing, or, there isn't enough room. And I think that's something that needs to be considered.
And we try and touch on that a little bit at the second bullet point, talking about, trying to have facilities and services that are adequate for development or redevelopment without decreasing that level of service. So we can get a little bit more refined with that language.
Jim, Jim, if I could suggest, when Wendy was mentioning climate adaptation, you could fit that in with climate and growth of population adaptation.
Great idea.
Something, yeah?
Yeah. Population changes. I mean, if we don't accommodate for housing for people that are in the workforce, you're going to see an erosion of businesses, and you're going to see fewer services. And so it could change the complexion of your community, where they go elsewhere or they go away and we lose population. So it doesn't always just go up. Just saying, it's a potential. So I think that adaptation to your population base gives you that breadth of that. Yeah. Okay, anybody else on this? Bob, got anything?
I'm good.
We'll go to the next
Avery?
goal.
Amanda? Okay.
Excellent. Let's see. This one? Yeah. So the next one, the next overarching goal, provide high-quality public safety services for the residents of Barnstable through cost-effective maintenance and upgrades of facilities and equipment. And I would add probably on there staffing of some kind in that regard for public facilities and services. That was something we heard quite a bit, especially when doing the departmental interviews. Both chiefs had strong concern over levels of staffing and being able to provide those services.
DPW
yes,
and police
of course, yes.
said that in our meetings.
That's right. And so the strategy we have here, consider the impact of any new development presenting impacts on Barnstable's public safety services during project review and mitigate those impacts to the extent feasible.
So, I'm sorry.
Susan.
Does mitigate in this case mean adding staffing if that's necessary, or does it mean, I don't know.
So I could give you a very practical example.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Barnstable Village needs a bigger fire station, right? Because the future of their service needs, they need more space, they need bigger fire trucks, and they're looking at a bigger space. That's a very real result of just our growth over time, and so there could be other aspects of that, and so this just mentions for us to be mindful of that as our next 10 years progresses.
So that's what you would mean by mitigate. Mitigating would be us adding a fire station.
That could be one example. It could also be thinking about for instance, any new development, you think about right-sizing that for the services that are there as well. So that could be
Available.
a mitigating
Yeah.
strategy as well.
Might I suggest a clarification on there?
Yeah.
On the bottom line, during project review and addressed to mitigate those impacts. Just kind of puts an action in it.
All right. Moving on to, let's see, and so again, so we'll have more opportunities to look at these, but if you think of other strategies you want to add to that, please feel free. The next one, we now are moving a little bit into schools. So the overarching goal here is provide educational facilities to meet the present and future needs of the Barnstable residents. So again, we're talking facilities and services. And so the three strategies we have linked here is to continue the work with the school department to plan for and fund facility maintenance and upgrade of school properties, obviously very timely. Because of the cyclical nature of population trends, the town should identify and secure or retain land for future school facility needs. Oh, excuse me, and I crossed out expansion and added needs, but again, happy to chat about that. And lastly, ensure that build-out projections and residential development approvals are communicated to the affected public school district in a timely manner so they can plan effectively for future needs. And obviously, that was something that we had a lot of discussions with the superintendent about, having really good, again, communication amongst each other about, what is coming around the horizon, and do we have the proper facilities and services to support that.
I think that's comprehensive. I got it. That's my opinion.
Any other comment on the schools?
I do.
Lindsay?
Do we know what the school committee, I understand they're looking at maybe building new schools?
I would say that might be accurate in terms of the conditions of the aging infrastructure. I don't know if that's in terms of overall population, but maybe we can specify that and work with our school superintendent to outline that better.
Well, I'm thinking of the Marston's Mill school property. If there's going to be need to be erected temporary schools, while, say, I think the one that comes to mind for me is Hyannis West. That's one of those late 60s single-story jobs that I'm sure is probably near the end of its life. So you would do a temporary, perhaps, on another location, build a new school.
And redevelop on the
on
old
the-
school site.
On the old schools.
Yeah, we can definitely inquire more with the schools on that.
Because we'd be ashamed to put them in a bind if we develop an open site.
What a lot of schools do is if they have land, not so much Barnstable West because it doesn't have the space for it, but they'll build a new structure on the land and then redesignate or change or even take down and use to build a new school where it is. So it's constantly changing and evolving, so to speak.
Well, does that point out the need to have parcels identified that could be schools if you can't just redevelop a site? Should we have a future,
I mean,
what
that-
if we had 1 million kids living? I'm just saying. I mean, because this is a land use plan, right? Do we want to have places that are going to be okay to have kids? Or even to say, there should be a school within, X number of minutes of a population of residences, so that
Right.
kids don't have to be in a school bus for 2 hours.
I think that could be a great action, a real good action to identify school population trends in
Yeah.
geographic areas,
Yeah.
and maybe identifying proper parcels for that. That's a great action.
Underserved, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, especially since we started our conversation today with a very clear map that shows, pretty much all the schools to the east and not a whole lot to the west, but very likely, and I can think
Follow
practically
the
speaking,
population.
yeah, the given population for those schools is very, very likely matching where those schools are for the most part.
Okay.
Well, we have turned over land very recently, and if we need it, I don't know, the district in Katuitt's looking at doing something with their building out there now that's
But-
still there.
You wouldn't.
We're not
I
giving
mean,
it back.
You don't want to put a school?
Well, I mean, we've got to get on top of this, because there isn't just 10 or 15 acres floating
Right.
around
This
to put
is-
dots on this map.
No, but it would,
doesn't
and then
exist.
they would also have to be near the school that would be redeveloped. You can't put kids in Hyannis West on a Marston's Mills property because that's a.
You might not
That's
have
kinda
another
my
choice
point, yeah.
if you don't have other land.
They put kids from Katuitt in Marston's Mills,
But that's like a 5-minute drive.
No,
and, like the
but, you know,
What a good
Hyannis is not.
they also have to get in a bus and come all the way to Hyannis for, high school, middle
Yeah,
school.
but they're older.
Yeah, the movement of children, look at the kids that have to go to the tech schools that choose that option. So I know movement of kids I think really needs to be discussed with the school committee. And if they're going to try to do it in a village-centric manner, we'd better look before we leap into
Well, I think it would be
developing things.
a good exercise for them to say, clean slate. In the future, what would be ideal? Don't be constrained by what you've got now. What would be a
Because there's
preferred
not the
state?
land out there to do that.
Well, but there might be something that could be redeveloped. I'm
So I-
thinking Myers Furniture is now Sturgis Charter School.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
but you really have to go acquire, now you're talking about acquiring property and taking down buildings.
Yeah.
When we had land that we just gave away.
Can we get it back?
That's already been answered.
Katuitt's not giving it back.
Francis,
So,
what-
All right.
Yeah. But
Before we
but
make
it-
any more of those mistakes. We have school buildings like the Osterville Elementary, the new Osterville Elementary, leased out. That's leased to a private educational group. Maybe we want to look at that and say, well, after this period of the lease, we need to capture it back. So there's places,
Yeah.
but there isn't a lot of open land.
Town Hall used to be a school,
Yeah, the one over there.
What-
the
what
other
did?
building.
This
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Oh, this
Yeah.
one? Oh, yes, it was, you're right.
and those were the dorms.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Used to be a
But,
college for that
uh,
matter.
went to school here.
How old are you?
I'm old.
I'm just saying,
Junior high school, this was a school. This was part of the junior high school.
It looks like a school. And I'm trying to think, it was called the normal school,
it was a teacher's
wasn't
college.
it?
Teachers'
Something like
college.
that.
Before that,
Teachers'
yeah.
college? Yeah, okay.
Cape Cod Community College
And then
was
Cape
here.
Cod Community College before they got their campus, which
One-
could be, let's talk about if we engage with community college about their master plan, maybe this is an idea we introduce to them, given what's maybe not in the western part of the community.
I think we do have to involve the schools committee, our schools.
Oh,
and the
absolutely,
schools
yeah.
themselves. But also bear in mind that most of the kids do not go to school during the summer. Some of them do, but that's when we have the worst travel situation on the Cape. So that, when we're talking about moving them or transporting them Hyannis to Marston's Mills and all that kind of stuff, it's worse, and the worst time to do that is in the summer, but then not as many kids are making those travel arrangements.
In any case, it seems to me that it would be good for us to, everyone to understand what the situation is as we're going forward.
I think Avery makes a question here. It's like, have we heard any pain or suggestion about this? I think that the issue is that it's public facilities and we're trying to be forward-looking, and
Can we
we're
invite,
we're throwing some spaghetti at the wall here, you know?
can I suggest we invite the schools, some representative to
Yeah,
presenters?
I think we leave room in this document for the school committee to have their input,
There you
you
go.
know? And they don't have to necessarily come and
Yeah,
and
they would
speak
take
to
the
us.
lead on
Happy to
something like
speak
that.
to anybody, but I think that what we're doing is we're recognizing that we value our children, we value their education, we value the community coming together, and schools become places of gathering, right? So do we have the facilities we need for education in our community now and into the future? And that's what we pose to the school committee, and that's, you know. Susan, you want to say something? Sue?
Have we, in the process of doing this, have we talked with the police department, the fire departments, about that if they're aware of what their future needs are and what they might want or need as well?
Oh, yeah. Yes, yes. So early on in phase one, we did,
that.
with some help of some committee members, we did direct interviews with each of the districts, the fire chief, et cetera. And then we've actually recently just came back to them to say, this is what the committee's been working on, or does it sound right? And so the needs, especially in a timely manner with the public facilities, you know, schools brought up a few items and that helped develop out these strategies. Same thing with like police and fire. You know, the repetitive thing again is what we talked about in terms of, you know, the staffing. Not so much facilities. Most of the facilities in terms of police, though they're already exploring the regional aspect. You know, many of the fire districts are already venturing on their future plans, but it was just a repetitive nature of we are understaffed. That's really what came out of it.
So we are, in fact, doing things to mitigate the population, the potential for population growth.
Oh, yes.
Because I was thinking about that under the schools. You know, we have to provide for the kids that come here. We can't, you know, we could say, well, this parcel can't be developed as intensively as you want because we don't have the services for it. But we can't do that for kids.
You know, the cost for schools is pretty much baked in, and you have an increment, and I'm sure the school committee has the data, but adding a few more kids to a school does not drive the cost. It's the building, the maintenance of the building, and it can be teachers' salaries, but it's not. You can grow your community, you can have more children here, and this choke point is not the schools. And if somebody wants some more information on that, I'd be happy to share.
Go to the next goal. So again, one of our facilities is our Cape Cod Gateway Airport. And so one of the overarching goals that was identified was continuing those operations at our Cape Cod Gateway Airport. The three strategies, so much like the community college, the airport is undergoing a master plan. So enhanced coordination between the airport's commission's master planning activities in the town. Second strategy is to actively explore integration of multimodal transportation services with the airport services. What that could mean is things like shuttles from airport to harbor, airport elsewhere, and implement the goals of the airport master plan. That's a pretty broad strategy there.
We could make sure light rail is referenced there.
The connectivity between.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mode.
Yep.
It is brought up.
Do we know what's in the airport master
Yeah.
plan? I mean, you do, but
It's ongoing, right?
Yeah, it's actually an
ongoing.
active process right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Town has several participants as well as the public and others. But yeah, it's an active process right now.
Does it address things like the potential for noise at the airport and addressing that?
I believe it's it's similar to ours where it's more broader in nature, but I know they've identified those
That is
concerns.
an issue,
And I
yeah.
know the people that are attending this will make sure that certainly that, that is being considered.
Oh, sorry.
It's on, sorry. Wendy brought up something I very rarely think of, but it is very important, I think, and that is light rail. So on the second one, actively explore integration of multi-modal transportation, such as development and of or promotion of light rail and other travel services
To and from the Cape.
to and from airport and within the community.
Well, the airport has the rail, goes along the eastern edge of the airport, so it makes sense to just reference light rail if we want light
Yeah.
rail.
But the thing is, we haven't mentioned
Somebody
rail.
wants
That seems to me like a red flag went up when you said that, because we don't have rail or we haven't left it open for development of rail, like to and from Boston or from Plymouth down to get an airport plane here over to Nantucket or something like that. Somewhere in there, I think we ought to reference that possibility, even if it's not developed yet. But
Well, no, that's a good point, Cheryl, but I'm going to beg to differ because on this town facilities map, one of the things is railroad tracks.
And
Oh, okay.
also, we do touch on it some, but that doesn't mean we can't touch on it again, but we do touch on it some in our infrastructure chapter. So again, we've had, those discussions about our horizontal infrastructure and facilities. And this is more speaking to the vertical, but that doesn't mean it's all interconnected. So you could certainly bring it up in this chapter as well.
I think we should put something on there that kind of it encourages it. But
mean,
anyway, that's my opinion.
So we heard that at the last meeting, or the meeting before that, residents in Hyannis desirous of a light rail system that would get people out of their cars, residents that would get people out of their cars just to go to and from. So I just want to honor that comment. Now, how logistically that gets done, I mean, that's a land use issue. You got to have a place to put unless it's on wheels, it's rolling stock that's on a dedicated roadway, but just throwing it out there.
Are you talking about actually building rail within the town? That's not going to happen.
I'm not
No, it's
talking,
not gonna happen.
That's not gonna happen, but
it
you
was
would-
mentioned by our
That's fine.
guests.
That's fine that people mention it, but it would have to be an expansion of the Cape Cod RTA service.
Yes.
You're not going to build rails.
Well,
Who's not going to build rail? I'm not going to build
We
rails.
could, and I think if I recall correctly, that we had Tom Kerr here, he said they're always looking for opportunities to improve, and the question is whether
Right.
MBTA comes to
MBTA.
Bourne
MBTA is to Bourne.
on a regular basis, daily?
No, but,
Yeah,
but
I
it's an
think that's
MBTA community, so like
Right.
the,
Right, but that, if you were talking there, and then you could take a quick light rail to Bourne
Yes.
and get to Boston or wherever,
yes.
that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about building new rails in this town.
No, but if you want to have light rail, you have to realize it's got to go somewhere.
exactly.
So where's it going to go?
Bourne,
Yeah, right.
the only place it can go.
Well, yeah, it could go to Bourne, but or. and
I
then
think
could
they
go
were
across.
thinking like downtown Portland, Oregon. Have you ever been to downtown Portland, Oregon?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
The reason I find it fascinating is because I think most of you know I've spent over half my life in London, and they had to institute rail and underground. I don't think we could do underground here because of the water. Mind you, they had the Thames and the ocean and everything else, but they had a huge parking problem, and it's a parking problem and then housing problem. And when they put the rail in, they found it massively helped the parking,
Yeah.
and it massively helped with their housing opportunities. So that's why
Well,
it kind of tweaks his
Yeah.
possibility
You
to
get-
leave
If
it
you
open.
give people alternatives, they'll potentially take it. But if you don't give them alternatives, guess what they're going to do? They're going to walk, take the bike, or a car, or an Uber,
Or the bus.
Give 'em a
or the
possibility.
bus. Well,
Madam
give them a
Chair.
possibility. Do I diverge here? You want to pull us back into
reality.
We
No,
do
not
have,
necessarily. I wanted to talk about light rail, actually.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because, we just talked about light rail, but we talked about three completely different concepts. And they are three completely different concepts. So we need to keep in mind that, going to Bourne to catch a commuter train, which may or may not ever go to Bourne, is not light rail.
right.
It's, light rail is like, like in downtown Denver or downtown Portland or a lot of other cities, where it's essentially a motorized trolley kind of a thing. We have a downtown trolley that goes through parts of Hyannis. There may come a time where the town would benefit from a light rail system that connects some of our western villages and northern villages to downtown Hyannis. That's not this week or next week. But, that's a legitimate light rail consideration.
that's where I was going with it.
It's also a legitimate consideration of getting people from Barnstable to Boston via rail as opposed to car, but that's not light rail. And we do have tracks that can be used for that purpose and are used to a certain extent to move people from here to Bourne on a daily basis, I think twice a day on some days for the evening dinner train. So the train tracks are usable. Trains use them. They move people to downtown Buzzards Bay. So that can be done. And the only question is,
Remove trash.
it's not so much infrastructure getting from here to Buzzards Bay, but it's rolling stock
Right.
and maintenance and things like that to make it financially viable to move people from Hyannis to Buzzards Bay. But you still got to get them from Buzzards Bay to Plymouth or Kingston or Middleborough to get to Boston.
Unless that would prompt the a rail across the bridge from expanding down, so it would meet with it. In other words, a connect. Not, walk across the street and get on theirs.
Right.
I
but
think we have some great suggestions for the airport master plan people,
there we go.
right?
Okay, fair enough.
Because all those things would have a hub across the street from the airport.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Moves to
talked
the
about that,
airport.
Bob, because I was just going to say that we have the railroad tracks.
Right.
And we could get people from Hyannis to Bourne. They might have to be rebuilt for heavier use or whatever, but we've got the right of way and we've got tracks that are there now. And I do think that it will be coming to Bourne.
That's exactly where I was going with it, but then it can
Yeah.
then have more lighter stuff here. Anyway,
Yeah, we have to be forward-looking,
Yeah.
very
Yeah. Yeah.
forward-looking.
Because if we don't look at it
Fran.
and encourage it, it'll never happen. If we want to encourage it, I didn't used to, but now I do.
so how do we implement that into here?
So,
Kate's sticking it in the red language there. Fran?
the last thing I would wanted to foist on Cape Cod is associating us with the MBTA. I think we should stay away from that. And, I grew up here and used to go to Boston frequently when I was a kid on the train. And it was a long ride on the Cape, and then you got to the canal, and you waited for the bridge to come down so you could go over the canal. And then so it's not a fast way to go, because of the canal.
But it is historic.
Yes, it is.
Let me pose another part to that comes to mind. One of the problems the Cape has is getting personnel to come over that bridge.
Yep.
It's huge. The hospital has huge problems with it. But if it makes it easier, then they can commute from across the bridge a little easier. Just saying.
Okay. Are we done with this section?
We are actually done with this section. I know it wasn't the most exciting section that you guys have reviewed.
Wait, Amanda's
Sorry.
not done?
I was just getting settled in, but I just wanted to put one little note in the public safety services for residents. Can we say upgrades of facilities, technology, and equipment?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, we talked about probably making all the town buildings hyper-connected, and so people could attend a meeting virtually and/or stuff could be zoomed out to the
Well,
population.
and I'm thinking in particular with the public safety services, just them having
Yeah.
more modern, like the most up-to-date modern technology that they can have.
Yeah, we begin to touch on that in terms of technology for the town's use, but also we touched on, and I'm not sure if you're here at that point, but we talked also about the future of facilities and how technology can improve our services and maybe reduce our footprint, because as we were mentioning earlier, like many folks that we talk to in the community have never stepped foot in town hall because they don't need to. They can pay all their bills online, and they can, give us a call, they could shoot us an email. And so there's a lot of different ways maybe we should be thinking about how we utilize our facilities in the future. And technology is definitely one that we can use to our advantage.
Are all the town buildings connected to the Open Cape broadband, or is that just key buildings?
Yeah, not yet, I don't believe.
Okay.
We are certainly working with Open Cape, but I don't believe all of our facilities are
Yeah,
connected there yet.
Okay.
Excellent.
One more
Susan,
question.
you guys
You
are on
may-
a roll.
I know. I had time to read this stuff this afternoon and think for a little bit.
Good.
You mentioned, I think we were talking about public safety, that something about examining regional services. And I just wondered if we wanted to put anything in here about that as a possibility for, mitigating population increase or mitigating whatever, and being potentially more cost-effective and working as well or better. And then the other thing that, do we say anything in here about the healthcare or the hospital, or do we
I
want to?
just think it's just broadly stated as social services,
Yeah,
the very
just that,
first.
we're talking,
Current and future social, economic, cultural, safety, traffic, communication needs of the community. So if you want to put a strategy
I
that
don't know what the
feeds into
strategy
that,
would be, except that we want to
maintain or expand
Or
social
support,
services.
perhaps.
ensure that adequate healthcare services are
Don't we pick that
available?
up in another section, though?
I think so.
We picked that up in another
That's what I
section.
couldn't remember.
Yeah,
Because when we
there's
were talking
another-
about the social services, I thought, oh, well, then there's
Yeah.
healthcare
And I,
services.
yeah,
which is
and I think
related.
we did have a lot of conversation about making sure that these are actions that the town can achieve, because ensure,
Right.
meaning, that we would do something to provide, whereas, the hospital isn't a town service. So, I think we landed on supporting them in some manner, but we could take a look at it, make sure we get that included in here for a
Yeah,
first
how
draft.
does hospital expansion affect traffic and
Yep.
what we have to do? And
And remember that the hospital also has limited land. They're kind of squeezing everything in.
Going up.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the only way to do it, you go up.
Lindsay, and then Fran.
To Wendy's point earlier about expanding our public space here for public meetings, who reviews the annual contract or semi-annual contract with our, was it Comcast or Verizon that we use?
Oh,
They're the ones who outfitted this room and did a lot of earlier work.
well, you're referring to our agreement to allow for Comcast, and
Yep.
I believe it's an every 5, maybe
Is it?
10-year contract, and that would be through the manager's office.
All right, well, that's perhaps the time to get in infrastructure improvements to make connectivity of town offices and meeting spaces more available. Because it is a real problem with the scheduling that we had to go through with
Yeah.
the new council subcommittees.
Yep.
We just don't have places to go. So whether they were to wire the conference room at the old annex building over here, or maybe the senior center.
And
just
then
to
we
make-
got to remember, though, that also runs parallel with adding more staffing. I mean, each one of those meetings takes 3 communication individuals, so building in more ability to man all these services as well.
That's, would have to be part of the whole, looking at that.
Maybe AI will be so ubiquitous by then, they don't need
Right. But it'd
text.
be good to see when that schedule of that contract's coming up and what we can work into it.
Okay. Avery. Cheryl. Fran. Bob.
I'm good, thank you.
Katya. Amanda. Fran.
I just wanted to say that I think somewhere in this document, it should push a trauma center for the hospital. It's urgently needed. People should not still be flying up to off Cape for services that should be provided down here. You know, that's just not, it's hazardous to their health, actually. When you have a bad trauma, you've got 60 minutes to take care of those people, and you shouldn't be doing it in a helicopter.
Well, I understand that some of those trauma diversions are made on the ground at the moment by the first responders. So it's not to say that we don't have trauma capacity.
No,
It's how
we have
they're-
it, but we don't. When you have a trauma unit, you have anesthesiologists, surgeons, everybody.
24/7, yeah.
24/7,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think the hospital does have that availability 24/7. They have a decent, they have a nice trauma center, but it would be nice to have a bigger one. I know that the guideline, the goal, there were two things they were expanding on that I was told, and that was the teen center and the geriatric, did I say elder center? And that's, we now know one's going up, but for a while there it was back and forth. I'm all in favor of a trauma center, but I think they have their own plans, so.
All right.
Avery.
I'm going to kind of go backwards here because I'm a little confused when we talk about the hospital and a geriatric center. I've never heard anything about this, but anyway, last, 2 weeks ago, we talked about the growth incentive zone. And part of the growth incentive zone was the medical use only area that was, it's where the CUDA center is and stuff like that. And,
It's an overlay district.
okay, so we haven't talked about that at all as an organization. I mean, Hanover of Hyannis was built with in the overlay district with whatever. They became exempt from being a medical use or something like that. They had to go through a permitting.
So,
Well, I don't want to talk about it. There's an underlying use, and then the medical was added to it, so it could happen, but maybe Hanover was part of that underlying use to begin with, but I'll
so it is convoluted, but that property was owned by the hospital. They chose not to build out that way, and that's why the tower is being constructed here. So they sold that property. Maybe 4 years ago, there was zoning that was adopted to allow for what you see behind Home Depot. So there's an overlay over top of the overlay. So our zoning is very convoluted, but that's what's going on there, and that's exactly why I think we're having this conversation about we need a master plan for that area, because we have underlying zoning with an overlay district about medical, with an overlay district about residential in an industrial park. So there's really no real vision for that area, and I think that's why it keeps bubbling up to the top as that's the next master planning area we really need to tackle.
Wasn't there something to the effect that it was located physically too far from the hospital to get the reimbursements they needed?
Yeah, something to that
There was
effect. I don't
something
know
like
all the
that.
details there.
Yeah, some reimbursement thing, so, right.
Yeah, so a lot of this is in the hospital's
Yeah.
court. What we as a community want to make sure is that we have access to high-quality healthcare
We heard that a
for
lot.
whatever we want.
in
Yeah,
phase
that needs to be built into the
But isn't that?
land use.
Exactly.
It's a land use.
That is
We're not
land
going to
use.
tell them how they're going to build their trauma center. To say, gee,
Exactly.
we'd really love to have a trauma center.
Jim, that area behind Kudos and that, you say that's in the next master plan. Does that mean the next meeting, or is that because
Oh,
it sounds like
no,
something else
just-
that needs to be done?
Yeah, so that's as we discussed in our future land use map, that targeted area geographically of where we want to start furthering our planning efforts. So no, it wouldn't be tomorrow.
Okay. I think that kind of wraps up our discussion for today, and the general correspondence is there's none, I'm told. Our next meeting was scheduled for Tuesday, October 8, and we are canceling that. Partly because we just won't have enough time between now and then to get the data together, the mapping process is being finalized. Go ahead, Jim, why don't you
Yep, no,
explain it?
you hit it right on the head. We are finalizing our interactive map that goes online. It's taken a little bit longer than we were hoping, but it's going to be up there and it's going to be available for the public to provide input. We didn't want to rush that, so the 8th was going to be too soon, so we'll give the full month of October for full public review. Committee's welcome to input as well, and we'll report back on the 30th.
And just so people know, we're going to continue to meet through the end of the year. January is when we go back out into the villages.
And to that effect, just a reminder, I think it's important, that's going to be a really important time for our process. We'll finally have one comprehensive plan that you can hold and flip through. That's one document. And now the committee, staff, the public can sift through that full document and make sure that it's meeting the expectations. And if not, that's when we want to hear from everyone to make sure that we are hearing correctly and making the appropriate changes to that draft. So we're envisioning January, February is the time frame for that to go back out, crisscross the community, and hold those listening sessions. I think that's it.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And
Second.
seconded.
Second, and do you want a roll call vote? Why don't we do a roll call vote? Fran, you start.
Aye.
Aye.
Sue? Aye. Cheryl?
Aye.
Lindsay? Wendy? Aye. Avery?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Katya?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Thank you.